Now let's continue the conversation with regards to the announcement that was made late last night or early this morning. And I'd like to welcome the Executive Director of the Bisan Center for Research and Development, Ubai Aboudi. Ubai, good to have you back. Shukran so much for joining us.
Thank you, and thanks always to you and South Africa for everything you're doing.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Ubai, it's very, to put it to you this way, necessary to have cautious optimism, given who is on the other side of the negotiating party, and that's Israel. Because the Israeli government has said that only after their approval will the ceasefire stand. And that should worry not just the Palestinians, but the world at large.
Well, it's obvious that what Netanyahu and his extreme far-right government want is getting their captives out and then continuing with the genocidal war, which is criminal, of course. And what we are seeing in this moment is that there's some momentum, some pressure being put on, especially from the United States, to get the first phase of the agreement done. What worries a lot is that even President Trump from the United States said that both parties agreed to the first phase, and the first phase only has the entry of humanitarian aid, which should not be part of any deal. This is a right, and it should always enter without any hindrance. The partial withdrawal of the Israeli forces and ceasefire, and then an exchange of prisoners. And I think that this first phase will go on, will happen. What worries us is actually that this ceasefire becomes a lasting one. What worries us is the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. What worries us is the side deals that the U.S. administration did with the Israelis, for example, continuous blocking of the Palestinian state, the annexation of parts of the West Bank, or the continued siege on the Gaza Strip. When we say the continued siege, actually Israel can return Gaza Strip to the situation of entry of goods and services like it was since 2007 until 2023, when barely 500 trucks used to enter daily, which is, of course, not enough for the population there, and will not create a situation or an atmosphere where Gaza Strip can accommodate the lives of 2 million Palestinians already living there at this moment. So this is our major fear.
Ubai, and herein lies the big issue or concern with this, is that as we discuss right now, the Israeli troops are not going to have a full withdrawal from Gaza. It's going to be a phased withdrawal. And when you look at the makeup of the Israeli government, it's quite clear that the stock of ethnic cleansing is not going to just evaporate like that. And when you listen to US President Donald Trump, who in the next 24 hours, he wants that Nobel Peace Prize. I was speaking to Faten Elwan earlier on, and there is this determination that he wants this Nobel Peace Prize. There's another concern, isn't it, Ubai, that as long as the Israeli troops are in and around Gaza, anything can happen, and this ethnic cleansing, which is being, or this idea of ethnic cleansing, which is being driven by the far right of Israel, can still occur.
Well, I agree with you. And I also want to emphasize that just because the bombing stopped does not mean that the genocide has stopped. The genocide was being carried out on several levels. One level through the direct killing and bombing, a second level through the starvation, a third level through making the situation unlivable for Palestinians. The first two might end with stopping the bombing and stopping the complete siege entry of humanitarian aid. They are talking about a couple of hundred trucks. Of course, we are opposed to a couple of hundred trucks. What we say is that humanitarian aid should not be conditioned and should not be limited, neither in quantity or in quality. The third aspect of it is actually making the situation unlivable for Palestinians, making circumstances so that the continued existence of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. This has to do with the rebuilding of the Gaza Strip, because almost everything in Gaza is destroyed. Almost all of the under infrastructure, like sewer systems, telephone systems, almost all of them have been destroyed. Almost all of the schools and universities have been destroyed. Almost all of the hospitals have been completely destroyed. At least they have been completely. Each hospital has been attacked, but almost all of them has been actually destroyed. So when we are saying that the Israeli government will continue its genocidal policies through siege, through refusing to allow for the free flow and entry of humanitarian aid, reconstruction materials, machineries, etc. This will continue. We are going to see more and more Palestinians actually dying from diseases, dying from lack of adequate health care, which is now a problem for everyone living in the Gaza Strip, and from the effects that diseases actually also occur during the genocide, like the inhalation of dangerous construction materials from all of the dust that came out because of the Israeli bombing. This far-right Israeli government is actually a manifestation of what the Israeli society wants and pushes for. They are pushing for the ethnic cleansing of the people, not just in the Gaza Strip, also in the West Bank. What people are failing to recognize is that in this year alone, Israel has almost taken control of areas of land in the West Bank that are equivalent to the size of the Gaza Strip. Like through bypass roads, through stopping Palestinians from accessing lands. The area between Ramallah Governorate and Jericho Governorate, they took control of about 370 square kilometers by limiting Palestinians' access to it. This is ongoing, that cleansing. This is not a side system. Palestinians, we've been saying that there's the Nakba that happened in 1948, but there's also the ongoing Nakba that's happening every day since then on a slower pace, but sometimes, like in the genocide in the past 2 years, it has become on steroids.
Yeah.
What we are afraid of as Palestinians is that the root cause of everything that happened is the occupation, is the apartheid regime, and this ceasefire plan does not deal with these structural problems and does not actually center itself around Palestinian, inalienable Palestinian rights, like the right to freedom, self-determination, the right of equality, the right of protection. And this is why we see that this is a partial step. What's scary about it is that the most powerful country in the world, the United States, is going at it like it's going on a game. Everyone is saying President Trump wants a Nobel Peace Prize. Well, if you want a Nobel Peace Prize, you should achieve peace and justice. There can never be peace without justice.
After the break, I continue my conversation with Ubai Aboudi. Cautious optimism, but also concern. And now, with this occurring, how isolated has Israel become in the eyes of the world? My conversation with Ubai wraps up after this break. Welcome back to News in Focus. Ubai, again, shukran so much for staying with us. Ubai, the plan of the sort of technocrats or leadership roles that the United States has proposed, of course, involves former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. And every single individual I've interviewed on the show has said it is not a good idea. Iraq, Afghanistan, you saw what has happened there. There have been talks of Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of US President Donald Trump, and various other business individuals that will be in charge of the so-called leadership within Gaza. How bad is this?
Well, this is neo-colonialism. We had, what do you call it? We had a British High Commissioner for Palestine back in the 1920s, He was a Zionist also. His name was Herbert Samuel. And he actually paved the way for the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from our land in 1948. And Tony Blair is, for everything, he is also a war criminal. He is a known liar. We tried him as Palestinians during the quartet. And it's not just about him. As Palestinians, we have an unalienable right of self-determination. We don't need British or French or German or whatever nationality or Americans to come and rule over us as Palestinians. We've had enough of foreign people coming and dictating our lives, our futures, whether they are Israelis or British or American. We don't want that. As Palestinians, we want self-determination. We want the ability to have sovereignty over our lands, to have freedom, to have the same basic rights as everyone else. What do you think? Do you think that Palestinians will be happy after over 100 years of colonialism to have a new high commissioner or
they want to give him the name Viceroy, according to reports. Yeah, I mean, that's the same of neo-colonialism. We had viceroys here in the SADC region in South Africa, in Southern Africa, and especially in South Africa. This is just not a good idea.
Yeah, of course it's not a good idea. This will not solve anything.
Yeah.
And if they think that the problem is with the current Palestinian factions, Palestinians will rise up again to resist any kind of mandate, any kind of colonialism that happens upon us. As Palestinians, we want our right to self-determination. This Gaza is not a gas field that's sitting in the ocean in front of it for companies and states to come and grab. Gaza is not a piece of real estate that's positioned on the Mediterranean, prime real estate for people to come. Gaza is a place, a homeland. It belongs to the people of Gaza, and the people of Gaza want their land back and want the ability to control themselves in a dignified and live in a dignified and peaceful manner. This is none of the plans that are being proposed by Trump or even the French-Saudi proposal push for that. What's actually the only proposal that we're seeing out there is the proposal of the Colombian president, Gustavo Petro, for Uniting for Peace, which proposes to deploy a multinational protection force from the UN, from states that are not complicit in the genocide, under the invitation of the state of Palestine to come with a clear mandate of implementing UN resolutions and protecting the Palestinians. This is coupled with sanctions against the apartheid and criminal and genocidal state of Israel, holding Israeli officials, soldiers accountable also in front of international courts and national courts for their crimes, and sanctioning the state of Israel, of course. These are tantamount procedures. President Gustavo Petro from Colombia is actually, as civil society, Palestinian civil society, we see it as the only initiatives that has a real prospect of achieving peace and justice. All of the other prospects, all of the other plans are promising us temporary, maybe stopping to the fighting for it to continue years on or later on without achieving our rights or inalienable rights as Palestinians for self-determination, right of return, and having our own state where we can govern ourselves and we can live peacefully.
Ubai, 2 weeks ago we saw many nations walking out during the UN General Assembly when Benjamin Netanyahu gave his speech. It's quite clear Israel is starting to face isolation, especially from Western countries who are saying, well, we're going to try and cut arms or certain bits of the deals that we had with Israel. You've got the ICJ case, you've got the ICC case. You and I have spoken at length with regards to this. If this ceasefire falls, and a lot of it is going to be predominantly on Israel, their isolation is going to start to grow, isn't it?
Yes, of course. I think that it's a shame that Israel is still a member of the United Nations. They basically violated every piece and aspect of international law and international humanitarian law there is. I think the delegates of these countries should have kicked Netanyahu out of the UN instead, like they did to apartheid South Africa back in the 70s, instead of them just walking out. And I think that these steps are coming down the road. We should all remember that the UN General Assembly gave an ultimatum for Israel, a one-year ultimatum that has ended without any concrete action. That actually ended on September 18th, when the occupation was supposed to end on the West Bank and Gaza and East Jerusalem. And this did not manifest. What we are seeing at this moment is an entrenchment of the occupation, a redeployment of its forces in order to maintain the Israeli system of control over Palestinian lives and Palestinian land. This isolation that we are seeing today is also a change in public understanding of what Israel is and what Zionism is. Zionism has been proven that it is a racist and now genocide ideology. When we see that 80% of Israelis, according to the latest polls, are fine with the ethnic cleansing or support the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. They do not see that their government is committing genocide or war crimes against Palestinians. This is not an okay society. We know that racism deeply affects the structures of society. And this racism can only be rooted out if its root causes are ended, including, of course, colonialism. And this is not just me speaking. Even Israeli peace activists have said, since the 70s, actually, that if the occupation of Palestinians does not end, then the very soul of Israel and the Israeli community will be corrupted. And we are seeing now that occupation, colonialism corrupts. This is correct. Frans Fanon talked about it in Algeria, where colonialism doesn't only dehumanize the colonized, but also the colonizer. What we are saying as Palestinian civil society, that the way forward for peace can only happen if we have justice. We have justice, accountability for the crimes that have been committed, justice for free, dignified lives for Palestinians. And the people of the world are now realizing that. The boycott, divestment, sanctions movement is growing, and people even have moved beyond that. Now we have a major campaign calling for the protection of Palestinians. Even American evangelicals are asking themselves, why are we pouring billions into a state that prides itself with killing Palestinian children? This is not Christian, and I would say this is not relating to any religion. We are seeing Jewish communities coming out and establishing the anti-Zionism conference that happened in Europe a few weeks ago. So the momentum is building up. And Israel, I would also liken Israel to a big NGO, non-governmental organization, in the sense that it's totally reliant on outside support. And now without this concrete European and American support, Israel could not have continued with this genocide for over 2 years and continued with its occupation of the Palestinian people and their dehumanization.
Ubai, I've got one final question. We've got 3 minutes left. Hamas seems to be agreeing to all of the points, well, most of them. A lot of it is, of course, giving up its governance of Gaza, handing it over to technocrats, handing it over to a group of Arab leadership individuals, whoever it may be. Everything that Israel is asking for Hamas to be removed from Gaza seems to be occurring. But, and that big but comes in, that question mark of whether Israel will abide by its side. Again, there has to be concern of that, isn't it, Ubai? Even if Hamas, which is the biggest enemy for Israel, as they would say, is gone, there's still that level or that lack of trust that Palestinians and the world is going to have towards Israel.
Well, I think that as Palestinians, we need security guarantees in the sense that this is a genocidal, nuclear, one of the biggest armies around the world. I think it's among the top 10 or 20 militaries around the world. That has an ideology that allowed it to do a genocide against our people, to dehumanize us to a degree where our lives, our children being slaughtered, burned alive, did not even move a feeling among themselves. I think we need, as Palestinians, security guarantees from Israel. Israel does not need security guarantees. Israel needs to be disarmed. Israel needs to, people of the world need to make sure that Israel cannot repeat what it did against the Palestinian people ever again. These are basic tenets. As for Hamas agreeing to leave the ruling of Gaza, look, Hamas agreed to this over a year ago. This is not new. This is not like an achievement of the past year. The past year, over a year actually, Israel has continued in its bombing and its dehumanization. In the initial Biden plan, Hamas agreed to leave the ruling of Gaza to a group of technocrats, Palestinians. And Hamas did not agree to the entire 20 points that President Trump proposed. They said that the points relating to a ceasefire, prisoner exchange, this is in our like in our mandate. We can agree on it, but we are not mandated to speak in place of the Palestinian people to agree to some sort of neo-colonialism or to give away basic and unalienable Palestinian rights, like agreeing to a viceroy, having Tony Blair as the new viceroy, and having a structure of governance that does not represent Palestinians. As Palestinian people, we have been pushing always for justice and including for reform in our own political system. Who rules the Palestinians? This should come through the ballot box. This should come through general elections. If we have general elections, then we have an accountable leadership that can actually participate and lead our people towards freedom and justice. They can negotiate in our name if they are elected. They represent a wide popular acceptance of the Palestinians. Look, as Palestinians, we understand that we need to reach some sorts of compromises in order to achieve peace. But these compromises can never be in the sense that Palestinians we are giving up our national rights or our right of return.
Ubai, I have to stop you there. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but always good having you on. Shukran so much for joining us. Masalama.
You're welcome.
That is Ubai Aboudi, Executive Director of the Bisan Center for Research and Development. That's all we have for you here on News in Focus. If you've missed today's episode, you'll be able to find it on our YouTube channel. From myself, Hospital, and the rest of the team in Johannesburg, I will see you again on Monday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.